Rain fell hard on the metal streets of the lower market district. Iris Webb pulled her coat tighter as she walked through puddles that reflected the colorful signs of alien shops. She had stayed late at the research lab again, studying dragon blood samples under the microscope. Her boss would probably scold her tomorrow for working overtime without permission, but Iris loved her job too much to care. Most humans never got to visit Pyria, the dragon homeworld. Even fewer got to work here as scientists. Iris felt lucky every single day, even when the gravity made her legs ache and the heat made her sweat through her clothes. Dragons were magnificent creatures, and she had dedicated her whole career to understanding their biology. A strange sound made her stop walking. It came from somewhere to her left between two tall buildings that leaned against each other like tired giants. Iris turned her head and listened carefully. There it was again, a soft chirping noise, weak and desperate. It sounded like a bird, but birds did not live on Pyria. The atmosphere was wrong for Earth creatures. Iris walked toward the narrow alley. Garbage containers lined both sides, and the smell made her nose wrinkle. She pulled out her portable light and shone it into the darkness. At first she saw nothing but trash and dirty water. Then something moved near the back wall. Her heart jumped when she saw it. A tiny dragon no bigger than a cat lay curled against the cold metal. Its scales were dull gray instead of the bright colors dragons usually had. One wing hung at a wrong angle, clearly broken. The little creature looked up at her with golden eyes that seemed too large for its small head. It chirped again, softer this time, as if it had used up all its strength just to call for help. Iris knew the law. Humans could not own dragons without special permits that took years to get. Taking a dragon, even a sick one, could land her in prison. She should call the dragon authorities and let them handle this. That would be the smart thing to do. The safe thing. But the baby dragon chirped one more time, and Iris felt her heart break. She had become a scientist because she wanted to help living things, not abandon them in alleys to die. Her humanity would not let her walk away from a suffering creature, no matter what species it was. She knelt down in the dirty water and slowly reached out her hand. The dragon flinched but did not try to run. It probably could not run even if it wanted to. Iris spoke in a soft voice, the kind she used with scared animals back on Earth. The words did not matter. The tone was what counted. The dragon watched her with those big golden eyes. After a long moment, it stretched its neck forward and sniffed her fingers. Its breath felt hot against her skin. Then, surprising her completely, the little dragon pressed its head into her palm. It was asking for help. Trusting her, Iris made her decision. She carefully wrapped the dragon in her coat, creating a warm bundle. The creature weighed almost nothing. She could feel its tiny heart beating fast against her chest as she held it close. It made a new sound. Not quite a purr, but something similar. Despite its pain, it seemed to relax in her arms. Getting back to her apartment meant walking past 3 security checkpoints. Iris forced herself to breathe normally and walk at a steady pace. She nodded to the guards as usual. None of them asked to search her coat. Why would they? She was just a human scientist going home after a long day. Inside her small apartment, Iris finally let herself panic a little. She laid the dragon gently on her bed and turned on all the lights. Now she could see how bad things really were. The wing was definitely broken. Long scratches covered the dragon's side. Its scales looked dry and cracked. Worst of all, the creature was terribly thin. She could see the shape of its ribs under the dull scales. Iris ran to her computer and pulled up her medical files. She had studied dragon anatomy for 3 years, but book knowledge felt different from having a real patient in front of her. She read quickly, looking for information about young dragons and healing. Her hands shook as she typed, first food. Baby dragons needed meat and specific minerals. Iris did not have dragon food, but she had protein bars and vitamin supplements. She crushed them together with water, making a paste. The dragon sniffed it carefully when she offered it on her finger. Then it licked the paste and made a happy sound. Within seconds, it had eaten everything she offered and looked for more. While the dragon ate, Iris examined its injuries more closely. Her human hands were much smaller than dragon claws, which helped her work gently. She found something strange under the dragon's left wing. 3 marks, like a brand, formed a triangle pattern. Iris did not recognize the symbol, but it looked important. Someone had marked this dragon on purpose. She mixed medicines from her first aid kit, combining human and dragon treatments. Her xenobiology training had taught her that some earth medicines worked on dragons too. She cleaned the wounds carefully, applied healing gel, and wrapped the broken wing in a soft splint made from her spare clothes. By the time she finished, Exhaustion had caught up with her. The dragon was already asleep on her bed, curled into a tiny ball. It looked so peaceful now, so different from the dying creature she had found in the alley. Iris smiled despite her worry. She would figure out what to do next tomorrow. Tonight she had saved a life. That had to count for something. 14 days had passed since Iris brought the little dragon home. She had named him Ember because of the way his scales glowed orange when sunlight hit them just right. His color had come back quickly once he started eating properly. Now he looked healthy and beautiful, with scales that shimmered like copper coins. Ember had grown too. He was now the size of a large dog, which worried Iris greatly. Her apartment was not big enough to hide a dragon this size for much longer. He could no longer fit under her bed, which had been his favorite hiding spot during the first week. Now he slept curled against her side at night, his warm body like a living heater. What amazed Iris most was how smart Ember was. He understood when she told him to be quiet. He learned to use the bathroom area she had set up in her storage closet. He even recognized his name and came when she called. Most incredible of all, he had started copying sounds she made. Yesterday he had clearly said Iris in a raspy voice that made her laugh and cry at the same time. But keeping him secret was becoming harder every day. Dr. Sterling, her supervisor at the research lab, had noticed something was wrong. He kept asking why she looked so tired. Why she rushed home immediately after work instead of staying late like usual. Why she always seemed distracted during meetings. Her dragon co-workers had started commenting too. One of them, a large green dragon named Smokescale, had sniffed the air near her yesterday and said something in the dragon language. The other dragons had laughed. Later, another human researcher translated for her. Smokescale had said she smelled like young fire, which apparently meant baby dragon. Iris had made up a story about visiting the dragon nursery for her research. Nobody seemed to believe her. Ember followed her everywhere inside the apartment. If she went to the kitchen, he waddled behind her. If she worked at her desk, he laid his head on her feet. He was always touching her somehow, as if afraid she might disappear. It made her heart ache to think about what he must have been through before she found him. She had tried teaching him things to keep his active mind busy. Ember loved learning. She showed him picture books, and he studied them with intense focus. She taught him to recognize letters in both human and dragon writing. Within days, he could pick out simple words. Iris had never heard of a dragon learning to read this young. Most dragons did not start their education until they were at least 2 years old. Ember was maybe 6 months old, judging by his size and teeth. Every evening, Iris watched the news broadcasts while preparing dinner. The dragon news networks talked constantly about the missing prince. Prince Ashbourne had been stolen from the palace 6 months ago, and the entire empire still mourned. Emperor Flameheart had offered a reward so large that Iris could not even imagine that much money. Every dragon in the empire was searching for the lost heir. The news showed pictures of what the prince might look like now. Iris studied them carefully. The artist had drawn a dragon with dark red scales and silver markings. Ember had copper scales with no markings. The prince would be about 6 months old. Ember seemed about that age. But millions of dragons were born every year. It had to be a coincidence. One night, Iris was fixing Ember's wing splint when she noticed something new. The 3 marks under his wing had become clearer as his scales healed. In the bright light of her desk lamp, she could see them properly for the first time. They formed a perfect triangle, and inside the triangle was a small flame symbol. It looked like a brand, burned into his scales when he was very young. Something about the symbol bothered her. She had seen it somewhere before. Iris pulled up her research files and searched through images of dragon culture and history. After an hour of looking, she found it. The flame inside a triangle was the royal seal of the emperor's family. Only dragons of royal blood were marked with this symbol. Iris felt her blood turn cold. She looked at Ember, who was playing with a ball of paper across the room. He pounced on it with his front claws, making happy sounds. He looked like any normal baby dragon having fun. But those marks under his wing told a different story. She had been living with Prince Ashbourne, heir to the Dragon Empire, for 2 weeks. She had broken laws she did not even know existed. Harboring royal family members without permission was probably a serious crime. They might think she had kidnapped him. They might execute her before she could explain. Her hands started shaking. Ember noticed and came over immediately. He pressed his warm head against her leg and made a concerned chirping sound. He could tell she was upset. This sweet, innocent creature trusted her completely. How could anyone have hurt him? How could anyone have left him in that alley to die? Iris took a deep breath and made herself think clearly. She needed more information before doing anything. If she went to the authorities now, they would take Ember away and ask questions later. She needed to understand what had happened to him first. Who had taken him from the palace? Why had they abandoned him? Was he safe if she returned him? Over the next few days, Iris started digging through public records. She used her research credentials to access palace archives and news reports from the night Prince Ashbourne disappeared. She was careful not to trigger any security alerts. Humans were allowed to study dragon culture, so reading historical documents did not seem suspicious. The official story said that unknown criminals had broken into the royal nursery and stolen the prince. They had disabled security systems and killed 2 guards. No demands for ransom had ever been made. No trace of the kidnappers had been found. It was as if the prince had simply vanished, but Iris noticed strange details as she read more carefully. Lady Cinderclaw had been in charge of nursery security that night. She was a noble dragon with a famous family name. Yet after the kidnapping, she had received a promotion instead of punishment. That seemed wrong. In human society, the person in charge when something bad happened usually lost their job. Iris dug deeper. Financial records were harder to access, but she found ways. Her human brain was good at seeing patterns in numbers. Dragons thought differently than humans. They valued honor and tradition over details. Humans valued details. That difference had always helped Iris in her research work. She found payments. Large payments from Lady Cinderclaw's accounts to several known mercenaries. The payments had been made 2 weeks before the kidnapping and again 1 week after. Iris felt sick. This was not a random crime. Someone inside the palace had arranged for the prince to be taken. Ember interrupted her thoughts by dropping a book in her lap. He wanted her to read to him. Iris put aside her dark discoveries and smiled at him. Whatever happened next, she would protect him. That was what mattered most. 3 weeks after finding Ember, Iris sat on her floor surrounded by printed documents and computer screens. Her apartment looked like a detective's office from old Earth movies. Papers covered every surface. Charts and timelines hung on the walls. She had barely slept in days, surviving on coffee and determination. Ember watched her with worried eyes. He understood something was wrong. Dragons might mature slowly in body, but their minds grew fast. Ember could speak several dozen words now, mostly in a mix of human and dragon languages. He kept asking, "Okay? Iris, okay?" Until she reassured him with hugs. The evidence Iris had gathered painted a dark picture. Lady Cinderclaw had not just arranged the kidnapping. She had planned to kill Prince Ashbourne. The mercenaries were supposed to make the murder look like an accident, but something had gone wrong. Maybe the mercenaries had tried to keep the prince for their own ransom plan. Maybe they had simply abandoned him when he became too much trouble. Either way, Ember had ended up alone in that alley, left to die. Iris found more connections the deeper she investigated. Lady Cinderclaw came from an ancient noble family that had once ruled the empire centuries ago. She had no children of her own, but her sister had 3 sons. If Prince Ashbourne died and the emperor had no other heirs, the throne might pass to another noble family. Cinderclaw's family would have a strong claim. It was a plot worthy of old Earth history books. Kill the heir, destabilize the government, seize power. Humans had done the same thing countless times. Apparently, dragons were not so different in their politics. The question now was what to do with this information. Iris could not go to regular authorities. Lady Cinderclaw held too much power. She might have allies everywhere. But Iris also could not keep Ember hidden forever. He was growing larger every day. Soon neighbors would hear him moving around. Someone would report strange noises from the human scientist's apartment. Dr. Sterling solved the problem by showing up at her door unannounced one evening. Iris had just enough warning to push Ember into the bedroom and tell him to stay quiet. She answered the door trying to look casual, which probably made her look more suspicious. Sterling was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had worked with dragons for 20 years, longer than Iris had been a scientist. He looked at her with the expression of someone who already knew the truth but wanted to hear it anyway. "You look terrible," he said, without greeting. "May I come in?" Iris could not think of a good reason to say no. She stepped aside and let him enter. Sterling looked around the apartment, noting the scattered research papers. His eyes stopped on a large copper scale lying on the coffee table. Ember had shed it yesterday. It was too big to hide quickly. "That is a juvenile dragon scale," Sterling said calmly. From a dragon about 6 months old, I would estimate. Want to tell me why you have it? Iris felt her careful lies crumble. Sterling was not just her supervisor. He had been kind to her since she arrived on Pyria. He had recommended her for this position. She owed him honesty, or at least some version of it. I found an injured dragon 3 weeks ago, she said slowly. I know I should have reported it, but he was dying. Nobody else was there to help. Show me, Sterling said. Iris called Ember out of the bedroom. The young dragon emerged slowly, sensing tension. He positioned himself between Iris and Sterling, protective despite his small size. Sterling's eyes went wide when he saw the marks under Ember's wing. As a dragon expert, he recognized the royal seal immediately. Do you have any idea what you have done? Sterling whispered. Yes, Iris said firmly. I saved his life. Someone threw him away like garbage. I could not let him die. Sterling sat down heavily on her couch, looking suddenly older. He rubbed his face with both hands, a very human gesture of stress. Ember relaxed slightly and moved back to Iris's side. She put her hand on his head and he leaned into her touch. This is Prince Ashbourne, Sterling said. It was not a question. The entire Empire is searching for him, and you have been hiding him in your apartment. Lady Cinderclaw arranged his kidnapping, Iris said. She picked up her files and handed them to Sterling. She planned to have him killed. I have proof. Financial records, timeline analysis, witness statements from the mercenaries she hired. Sterling read through her research for a long time. His expression grew darker with each page. Finally, he looked up at her with something like respect in his eyes. This is excellent detective work, he said, also extremely dangerous. If Cinderclaw knows you have this information, you will not live to testify. Neither will the prince. That is why I need your help, Iris said. I want to take this directly to Emperor Flameheart. No intermediaries, no one who might be working for Cinderclaw. You want to walk into the Imperial Palace carrying the stolen prince and accuse a high noble of treason, Sterling said flatly. They might execute you just for bringing such serious charges. They might, Iris agreed. But what choice do I have? Keep hiding him until someone discovers us? Run away and live as a criminal? He deserves to be with his father. The Emperor deserves to know his son is alive. Ember had been listening to their conversation. He could not understand all the words, but he grasped the emotions. He tugged on Iris's sleeve and said in his raspy voice, Home? Go home? Iris felt tears burn her eyes. She knelt down and looked at Ember directly. Over the past weeks, she had learned to read dragon expressions. Right now, Ember looked scared but also hopeful. He had vague memories of before of a warm place where people sang to him. He had been too young to understand he lived in a palace, but he remembered feeling safe. Do you remember the smoky lady? Iris asked gently. She had been working with Ember on his memories, using techniques human psychologists had developed for trauma patients. Ember's scales darkened, a sign of distress in young dragons. Bad lady? Told me father not want me. Said I was broken. Sterling's hands clenched into fists. Even he, who had worked with dragons for decades, looked angry at the thought of someone telling a baby those lies. Your father wants you very much, Iris said softly. He has been looking for you every single day. The lady lied to you. She is the one who is bad, not you. Ember processed this information. Dragons matured emotionally faster than humans. Even at 6 months old, he could understand complex feelings like betrayal and hope. He looked at Iris with those big golden eyes and said, You come too? Not leave me? Iris hugged him, wrapping her arms around his warm body. I will never leave you. I promise. We will face this together. Sterling stood up and straightened his shoulders. I will arrange an emergency meeting with the Emperor. We will use diplomatic channels that Cinderclaw cannot block. But Iris, you need to understand the risk. You are about to become involved in imperial politics. Your life will never be simple again. My life stopped being simple the moment I found him in that alley, Iris said. I would not change that choice for anything. Dr. Sterling worked quickly. Within 2 days, he had secured an emergency audience with Emperor Flameheart using his diplomatic credentials. The message went through secure human channels that Lady Cinderclaw could not monitor. They would enter through the palace's diplomatic entrance, bypassing the normal security that Cinderclaw controlled. Iris spent those 2 days preparing. She organized all her evidence into a clear presentation. She practiced what she would say. Most importantly, she talked to Ember about what would happen. He deserved to understand. Now they stood at the palace gates and Iris felt her courage wavering. The palace was massive, built for creatures 20 times her size. Towers stretched toward the sky like metal mountains. Guards stood at every entrance wearing armor that gleamed in the sunlight. Each guard was larger than her entire apartment. Ember rode in a special carrier on her back, designed for transporting small dragons. He was too big to hide completely now, but the carrier had sides that concealed the royal marks on his scales. To anyone watching, Iris just looked like a human researcher, transporting a dragon specimen. Sterling walked beside her, his face calm despite the tension. They passed through security checkpoints with diplomatic credentials. Human ambassadors were rare enough that most guards simply waved them through without close inspection. Iris felt every second stretch like hours. Any moment someone might recognize Ember. Any moment alarm bells might ring. The throne room made Iris feel smaller than she had ever felt in her life. The ceiling was so high she could barely see it. Pillars of carved stone lined the walls, each one showing scenes from dragon history. The floor was polished so bright it looked like a mirror. At the far end, the Emperor sat on a throne of black metal. Emperor Flameheart was the largest dragon Iris had ever seen. His scales were deep red, almost black, and they seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. His eyes glowed like molten gold. Horns curved back from his head, each one as long as Iris was tall. When he breathed, smoke drifted from his nostrils. The court was full of noble dragons. They stood along both sides of the room, dressed in ceremonial robes. Iris spotted Lady Cinderclaw near the front, wearing silver chains that marked her high rank. The dragon noble looked calm and confident. She clearly did not expect any threats today. Sterling led Iris forward. Following dragon protocol, they stopped at the appropriate distance from the throne and bowed. Iris kept the carrier on her back, making sure Ember stayed hidden for just a bit longer. "Your Imperial Majesty," Sterling said in a voice that carried through the huge room, "I bring urgent news that could not wait for normal channels. This human scientist has discovered information vital to the Empire's security." Emperor Flameheart leaned forward slightly, his massive head tilted as he studied Iris with ancient eyes. "A human brings vital information? This is unusual. Speak, small one. What have you discovered?" Iris felt every dragon in the room staring at her. She was prey surrounded by predators. One wrong word could end her life. But she thought of Ember pressed against her back, trusting her completely. That gave her courage. "Your Majesty, I have found your son," she said clearly. Silence fell over the throne room like a physical weight. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Emperor Flameheart's eyes widened, the first emotion Iris had seen cross his face. "Explain yourself," the Emperor said, his voice carefully controlled. Iris carefully removed the carrier from her back and set it down. She opened the front and called softly. Ember emerged slowly, blinking in the bright light. He looked so small in this enormous room. His copper scales seemed dull compared to the rich colors of the noble dragons watching him. But then Emperor Flameheart saw the marks under Ember's wing. The royal seal was visible even from the throne. The Emperor made a sound Iris had never heard before. It was something between a roar and a sob. In one smooth motion, he left his throne and moved toward them. Noble dragons scattered out of his way. The Emperor stopped a few feet from Ember. His massive body trembled. "Ashbourne?" he whispered. "My son?" Ember looked up at the huge dragon. Recognition flickered in his young eyes. Some deep instinct remembered this presence, this scent. "Father?" he said in his raspy voice. Emperor Flameheart collapsed to the floor, bringing his head down to Ember's level. Tears ran down the Emperor's scaled face, each one as large as Iris's fist. He extended one massive claw and gently touched Ember's head. The young dragon pressed forward, making happy sounds. The throne room erupted in noise. Dragons shouted in joy and confusion. Some wept openly. Guards rushed forward to protect their emperor and prince. Sterling pulled Iris back, giving the royal family space. Lady Cinderclaw moved through the chaos. Iris saw her heading toward a side exit. She could not let the guilty escape. Lady Cinderclaw arranged the kidnapping. Iris shouted over the noise. Her small human voice should not have carried, but something in her tone made everyone stop and listen. "I have proof. Financial records, witness testimony, timeline analysis. She paid mercenaries to steal Prince Ashbourne and kill him." Every dragon turned to look at Cinderclaw. The noble dragon froze, her face showing nothing. "This is absurd," she said smoothly. "A human accuses me with no evidence. She probably stole the prince herself and now tries to deflect blame." "I have evidence," Iris said. She pulled out her organized files and held them up. "Bank transfers from your accounts to known criminals. Payments made exactly 2 weeks before and 1 week after the kidnapping. Communication records showing you disabled security systems that night. Testimony from the mercenaries you hired, whom I tracked down through financial patterns. Sterling stepped forward. I have verified her research. The evidence is solid by both human and dragon legal standards. Emperor Flameheart rose slowly. His grief had transformed into something harder. Commander Scalewing, he said quietly. Arrest Lady Cinderclaw. Bring her alleged accomplices for questioning. Cinderclaw's calm finally broke. You believe a human over me? I am nobility. My family has served the Empire for generations. Your family served themselves, the Emperor said coldly. My son remembers you. Ashbourne, do you know this dragon? Ember had been watching everything with wide eyes. Now he looked at Cinderclaw and his scales darkened with fear. Smoky lady, he said. She took me. Told me I was bad. Father not want me, the court gasped. Hearing their prince speak those words, seeing his fear, turned any doubt into certainty. Guards surrounded Cinderclaw. She tried to fight, but it was useless. Within moments, she was restrained. Emperor Flameheart returned his attention to Iris. She felt pinned by those golden eyes like a butterfly under glass. You saved my son. You solved a conspiracy that my best investigators could not crack. You risked your life to bring him home. Name your reward, human. Anything in my power to give is yours. Iris looked at Ember, who was pressed against her leg again. The young prince seemed overwhelmed by all the attention. He had been through so much trauma. He needed stability and familiar faces. I ask only to remain in his life, Iris said. He has been through terrible things. He trusts me. I want to help him heal and grow. Let me be his teacher if you will allow it. The court murmured in surprise. Dragons offered glances to each other, shocked that a human would ask for so little when she could demand wealth or power. Emperor Flameheart studied her for a long moment. Then he did something that surprised everyone. He bowed his head to her, a gesture of deep respect rarely given to anyone, never to a human. You shall be granted noble rank, the Emperor declared. You will serve as Prince Ashbourne's personal tutor and Earth Mother, a title we create this day. You will have all resources you need. My son's happiness and education are in your hands. Iris felt tears on her own face now. She knelt down and hugged Ember. I told you I would never leave you, she whispered. Promise kept, Ember said, snuggling closer. Promise kept. Iris moved into the palace 3 days after the imperial audience. Her small apartment was replaced by a suite of rooms larger than any house she had lived in on Earth. Servants brought her meals on golden plates. Guards bowed when she walked past. It felt strange and uncomfortable, but she endured it for Ember's sake. The young prince needed her now more than ever. The reunion with his father had been emotional, but Ember still clung to Iris whenever he felt scared or uncertain. 6 months of trauma could not be healed in a few days. He had nightmares where he woke up crying, calling for her. She always came, no matter the hour. Emperor Flameheart understood. He was grateful that his son had someone who could comfort him when a massive dragon father was too overwhelming. The Emperor visited every day, spending hours with Ember, but he never tried to separate them. He saw how Ember needed both his birth father and his Earth Mother. Not everyone was happy about the arrangement. Traditional noble dragons viewed Iris's elevation as an insult to their ancient hierarchies. A human, they whispered, had been granted rank that some dragons spent lifetimes trying to earn. She had no noble blood, no famous ancestors, no great deeds beyond finding one lost child. It was wrong. Unnatural. Lady Brightscale cornered Iris in a palace corridor one morning. The noble dragon was old and respected. Her scales turned white with age. She looked down at Iris with cold disapproval. You do not belong here, human, Brightscale said. You are filling the prince's head with your strange ideas. He should be learning dragon traditions, not human customs. Iris forced herself to meet the dragon's eyes without flinching. Prince Ashbourne is learning both. I teach him reading and science. His dragon tutors teach him history and culture. He will be stronger for understanding multiple perspectives. He will be weak, Brightscale snapped, corrupted by human softness. A prince needs strength, not sentiment. Before Iris could respond, Ember's voice came from behind them. I am not weak, they both turned. The young prince had grown rapidly in the past weeks with proper food and care. He was now the size of a horse, his copper scales brilliant and healthy. He stood tall facing Lady Brightscale without fear. Mother Iris saved me when I was dying, Ember continued. She taught me that kindness is not weakness. She showed me that asking for help is brave, not shameful. I am proud to learn from her, and I am proud to learn from dragons too. Both make me better. Brightscale stared at the young prince. Something in his words seemed to reach her. She inclined her head slightly, a gesture of acknowledgement. You speak well for one so young. Perhaps there is value in mixed teachings after all. She left without another word. Iris hugged Ember tightly. Thank you for defending me. You always defend me, Ember said simply. I defend you too. That is what family does. But not all opposition was so easily handled. One evening, as Iris walked through the palace gardens, 3 dragons surrounded her. They wore no identifying marks, but their aggressive postures spoke clearly. These were not nobles looking to argue. These were criminals looking to hurt. Cinderclaw sends her regards, one hissed. You put our mistress in prison. Now you pay. Iris backed away, trying to reach an area where guards might see. But the dragons herded her away from the main paths toward a section of garden surrounded by tall hedges. Her human body was fragile compared to their scales and claws. One good hit would kill her. A roar split the air. Ember came crashing through the hedges, moving faster than Iris had ever seen him. He was still young, still small compared to adult dragons, but fury made him formidable. He placed himself between Iris and the attacker's, wings spread wide, teeth bared. Touch her and die, Ember snarled. His voice had grown deeper recently, gaining the resonance of dragon speech. The assassins hesitated. Fighting a human was one thing, fighting the crown prince was another. But they had been paid well and feared Cinderclaw's anger more than they respected royal authority. They attacked together. Ember met them with surprising skill. His dragon tutors had been teaching him combat, and apparently he had learned well. But he was still young, outnumbered, and smaller. He could not win this fight through strength alone. Iris refused to hide while he fought for her. She looked around desperately for anything she could use. Her eyes fell on a gardening tool left by the hedges. It was a pole with a curved blade, used for trimming high branches. She grabbed it and ran forward. Humans were weaker than dragons, but humans could think tactically. Iris went for the eyes and soft spots. She struck at joints and wings. She used her small size to stay out of reach, darting in to hit and then dodging away. The assassins had not expected prey to fight back. Ember saw what she was doing and adapted his own strategy. Instead of trying to overpower the larger dragons, he copied Iris's tactics. He went for vulnerable spots. He used speed instead of strength. Together, human and dragon fought as a team. Guards finally arrived, drawn by the noise. They surrounded the assassins quickly. 2 of Cinderclaw's followers surrendered. The 3rd tried to run and was brought down. Ember stood panting, bleeding from several wounds. Iris had bruises forming along her arms and a cut on her forehead. They looked at each other and started laughing. It was probably shock, but the laughter felt good. They were alive. They had protected each other. Emperor Flameheart arrived moments later, summoned by urgent reports. He examined his son's wounds with a father's concern, then turned to Iris. You fought alongside my son, against 3 adult dragons, with a garden tool. I was not going to let them hurt him, Iris said. I do not care how big they were. The Emperor made a sound that might have been a laugh. Humans are strange creatures. Fragile but stubborn. I begin to understand why my son loves you. The attack led to increased security. More of Cinderclaw's network was uncovered and arrested, but it also led to something unexpected. Stories of the human who fought dragons spread through the palace. Servants whispered about her bravery. Young dragons asked to meet her. Some nobles reconsidered their opposition. Dr. Sterling visited her a week later. He sat in her palace suite drinking tea, looking amused by the fancy surroundings. You have become famous. Do you know what they are calling you in the lower city? Dragon Mother. The human who fights like a dragon for her child. I just did what anyone would do, Iris said. No, Sterling corrected. You did what humans do. You saw something that needed protecting and you protected it, regardless of the cost to yourself. That is humanity's greatest strength. We care about things bigger than ourselves. Iris thought about that. She had come to Pyria to study dragons, to learn about an alien species. Instead, she had found a family. She had gained a son who happened to be a dragon prince. Her small human life had become tangled with empire politics and royal succession. She could never go back to Earth permanently now. Her work required her presence here. Ember needed her. This was her home now, for better or worse. But looking at Ember playing with his tutors through the window, healthy and happy and safe, Iris knew she would make the same choice again. Some things were worth more than going home. Some bonds transcended species. 5 years changed everything. Iris stood in the palace courtyard watching Ember practice flight maneuvers with his combat instructor. He was no longer the tiny dragon she had found dying in an alley. Now he was massive, his wingspan as wide as a transport ship. His copper scales had darkened to bronze, and his voice carried the deep resonance of dragon royalty. But he still called her Mother Iris. That had never changed. The Dragon Empire had changed too. Humans were no longer rare curiosities. After Iris proved her worth, Emperor Flameheart had invited more human experts to the capital. Human doctors worked alongside dragon healers. Human engineers collaborated with dragon craftsmen. Human teachers brought new methods to dragon schools. The integration was not always smooth, but it was happening. Iris had established the Human Advisory Council, a formal body that helped dragons understand human perspectives and helped humans navigate dragon culture. She split her time between teaching Ember and managing this growing exchange program. It was exhausting work, but she loved it. Today was special. Today Ember would face his coming-of-age trial. Every dragon of royal blood had to complete this test before being named Crown Prince officially. It was an old tradition, designed to prove worthiness to lead. Ember had trained for years, but he was still nervous. Traditional nobles had been arguing for months that Ember's human influence made him unsuitable to rule. They said he was too soft, too willing to compromise, too interested in other species' opinions. A proper dragon emperor ruled through strength and dominance, they claimed. Ember's mixed upbringing had corrupted him. The trial would settle the argument once and for all. Ember landed beside Iris with the grace of long practice. Despite his size, he moved carefully around her, always aware of her human fragility. "I am ready," he said. "The trial begins at noon." "You will do wonderfully," Iris said, reaching up to touch his leg. Her hand could no longer reach his head like it used to. He had grown so much. "Remember everything you have learned, from dragons and from humans." Emperor Flameheart joined them, his presence still commanding after 5 years of rebuilding his empire. "My son, the trial will test you in 3 ways: strength, wisdom, and leadership. You must succeed in all 3 to claim your title as Crown Prince." "I understand, Father," Ember said respectfully. The trial took place in the great arena where dragons had tested themselves for thousands of years. Spectators filled every level. Nobles sat in honored positions. Common dragons crowded the upper sections. A special platform had been built for humans and other smaller species, who now lived in the capital. Iris sat there with Dr. Sterling and other human advisors. The first challenge was strength. Ember faced 3 champion warriors simultaneously. The traditional test required overpowering them through sheer force. Iris watched nervously as the warriors circled Ember, their scales scarred from countless battles. But Ember did not simply attack head-on. He had learned strategy from his human tutors and tactics from his dragon teachers. He used the arena's terrain, forcing his opponents to separate. He focused on one warrior at a time, using speed and precision instead of brute strength. When he finally defeated all 3, they yielded with respect. Ember had won through skill, not just power, the nobles murmured. This was not how the challenge was usually won, but it was effective. The second challenge tested wisdom. Ember was presented with 3 impossible problems: how to feed a city during drought, how to make peace between feuding clans, how to punish a crime committed by a noble. Traditional dragons would answer with absolute decrees backed by royal authority. Ember surprised everyone. For the hunger problem, he suggested studying human agricultural methods that used less water. For the feuding clans, he proposed a council where both sides could speak before neutral judges. For the criminal noble, he recommended that justice should apply equally regardless of rank. Some nobles looked outraged. Others looked thoughtful. Ember's solutions came from multiple perspectives, combining dragon tradition with human innovation. They were not the expected answers, but they were good answers. The final challenge tested leadership. Ember had to inspire others to follow him on a difficult task. He was given 20 young dragons and told to organize them to solve a complex problem. The traditional approach was to command them through authority and intimidation. Instead, Ember spoke to each dragon individually. He asked their opinions. He assigned tasks based on their strengths. He worked alongside them rather than standing apart. When they struggled, he encouraged them. When they succeeded, he praised them publicly. By the end, the young dragons would have followed him anywhere. Not because they feared him, because they believed in him. The arena fell silent when the trials concluded. Judge Dragons conferred among themselves. Some nobles clearly wanted to reject Ember despite his success. Others could not deny that he had completed every challenge, even if his methods were unconventional. Emperor Flameheart rose from his throne. His voice carried through the arena without needing any assistance. My son has completed the trials. He has shown strength through skill, wisdom through compassion, and leadership through respect. These are the qualities our empire needs. I declare Prince Ashbourne ready to serve as crown prince. The crowd erupted, cheers mixed with scattered protests. But the majority supported their prince. They had watched him grow from a lost child to a strong leader. They had seen how human and dragon teachings combined to create something new and valuable. Ember flew to where Iris sat. He landed carefully on the platform built to hold his weight. In front of the entire empire, he bowed his head to her. Thank you, Mother, for showing me there are many kinds of strength. You saved me twice, once from death and once from ignorance. Iris felt tears on her face. She reached up and touched his lowered head. You saved me too, she said softly. You showed me that family is not about species or blood. It is about love and choice. The ceremony continued for hours. Ember was officially invested as crown prince with all traditional honors. He wore the crown that had waited 5 years for him. He made oaths to protect the empire. He accepted the responsibilities of his position, but he also did something no crown prince had ever done before. He invited human representatives to stand beside dragon nobles during the ceremony. He declared that the empire would be stronger by embracing diversity rather than fearing it. He announced new policies for cooperation between species. Some nobles left in protest, but more stayed to listen. Change never came easily, but it was coming. That evening, Iris found Ember alone on a high tower overlooking the city. He often came here to think. She joined him, sitting on the wall despite the dangerous height. After 5 years on Pyria, she had lost most of her fear of falling. Do you ever regret it? Ember asked. Your life on Earth? Your human friends and family? You gave up everything to stay here with me. Iris looked out at the city lights. Dragons and humans moved through the streets below, living and working together. It was far from perfect, but it was progress. I did not give up everything, she said. I traded one life for another, and this life has been more amazing than I ever imagined. But you cannot go home, Ember pressed. Not really. Earth is too far. The journey takes months. You are stuck here. I am not stuck, Iris corrected gently. I chose, and I keep choosing every single day. You are my son, Ember. This is my home. Those are not sacrifices. They are gifts. Ember was quiet for a moment. Then he said something he rarely spoke aloud. I remember that night. When you found me, I was so scared and hurt. I thought I would die alone in that alley. Then you came. You were so small and fragile, but you picked me up anyway. You carried me home. You fixed my wing. You told me I mattered. He paused. That night changed the whole empire, and it started with one human being kind. Iris smiled. That is what humans do best. We see someone suffering and we help. We are not the strongest species or the smartest, but we try to care. That matters. It matters more than anything, Ember agreed. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the twin moons rise over the dragon capital. Below them, humans and dragons finished their day's work. Children of both species played in the streets. Scientists collaborated in laboratories. Artists shared techniques. Guards from different worlds protected the same peace. The Dragon Empire would face challenges in the years ahead. Integration was messy and complicated, but they would face those challenges together, stronger for their diversity. And it all started because one human woman could not walk past a dying child, even when that child was an alien species, even when helping him risked everything she had. She had acted from simple compassion, never imagining it would reshape the balance of power in an entire empire, but that was humanity's gift to the universe, the ability to see beyond differences and choose kindness, the stubbornness to help even when it was dangerous, the wisdom to know that strength came in many forms, and sometimes the smallest acts created the biggest changes. Iris looked at her son, the crown prince of a vast empire, and felt pride swell in her chest. She had not given birth to him, but she had given him something just as important. She had given him a second chance at life and a broader view of what leadership could mean. As the stars came out above them, Iris knew that whatever the future held, she had already achieved something remarkable. She had built a bridge between two species. She had raised a prince who would rule with both strength and compassion. She had proven that humans belonged among the stars not as conquerors but as partners, and she had done it all by simply refusing to leave a child to die alone.